The more I think about this budget that the Carney government stuck us with, the more pissed off I get. I'm going to tell you exactly why, but to do so, I need to take a few steps back. We all know by now that a Conservative MP has crossed the floor to the Liberals, and people are going nuts speculating about who might be next. And rumors, which I haven't substantiated, are circulating on social media that Poilievre's guys are threatening to, quote, ruin anyone thinking of crossing the floor, including, according to this former Liberal staffer, quote, digging up personal dirt and blackmail. Steve Maher is a longtime political journalist on the Hill, and he said that this rumor is, quote, widespread and fairly specific. Still, Chris D'Entremont went ahead with it, and he said it was at least in part because of Poilievre's leadership style. But there's another thing about this that I can't shake. Chris continues to call himself a conservative, specifically
a Red Tory.
That is an ideology that many have also ascribed to Mark Carney. It basically means, to oversimplify things, someone who is fiscally conservative but socially liberal. And it says a lot to me about this government that someone who still calls themselves a conservative, albeit a more progressive one, feels at home in this Liberal Party. And he specified that he was partially drawn to the party because of the budget. That makes sense when you consider how this government is approaching its fiscal discipline. Because as you know by now, they are spending big on generational investments, which includes tons of tax incentives for businesses and a whole lot of defense spending. But they aren't primarily offsetting this spending through, say, taxes, even though there are clearly some who aren't paying their fair share. Income inequality in Canada is the worst it's been in recorded history. But instead of, say, raising taxes on the rich, they're paying for this generational investment by slashing public service jobs and bringing in AI to supplement it, and reducing annual program spending increases. Here's what some union guys had to say about that.
Ordinary Canadians are going to be impacted by these cuts in dramatic ways. It's not just public servants losing their jobs. That is a terrible thing to be doing in the middle of an unemployment crisis. But at the same time, we're talking about worsening services for Canadians or outright taking things away from ordinary Canadians.
No wonder a Red Tory likes this budget. In fact, now that people are having more time to actually read this budget, we're getting a much clearer picture of who is having to make those sacrifices that Carney was talking about. And more specifically, who isn't. The government is getting rid of the luxury tax on private planes and yachts, saying that this was inefficient. And they're getting rid of the underused housing tax, which previously put an extra 1% tax on those who have empty or underused homes in a housing crisis. Oh, and that capital gains tax the oligarchs were freaking out about? The one that only increased what the rich have to pay on their capital gains over $250,000. Yeah, it sounds like that increase is permanently gone. So let me get this straight. We're scrapping several taxes that only impact the rich, all while we're sacrificing investments in programs and public service jobs, so we can pay for generational investments that primarily benefit business and defense. No wonder conservatives are crossing the floor. What do you think of all this?